Hey everyone, Mel Waldorf, the Alameda Guitars here, going to be doing an exciting reverb test. We have pans, have we got pans? We have a modern Mod 4AB3C1B. We have a modern Mod 4AB1C1B. We have a modern 4AB3C1B tank, but with vintage springs in it. Wow. And then, sneaky down here, we have a proper vintage 4AB3C1B. So what we're going to be doing is listening to those using this fancy switch-o-matic switcher. Hardly a Radio Shack special, but we will be going through and listening to them all through this lovely vintage unit, and then through this lovely piece of God's gift on earth. Thank you, Leo Fender, and God, of course, for coming up with such a beautiful thing, and James B. Lansing as well, because that's your magic in there. So I'm going to put the camera in place, and then let's have a listen. Okay, so now that we have the camera pointed at the beautiful JBL, we are going to go through, like I said, and listen to these different pans. It's a modern Fender designated pan, and that is 4AB3C1B. And the 4 is the type of the pan that is a long two-spring pan. A and B relate to the impedance of the input and output transducers. 3 is the length of the decay, and this is actually going to be the crucial one, because the modern pans with the 3 decay, 3 is long, 2 is medium, 1 is short. The modern pans seem to have much more, a much greater decay, and can overwhelm the notes compared to a vintage tank. So what we're after is trying to figure out, is there a modern equivalent? So we have first is going to be that pan. Then we have another modern pan, but this one has a decay length of 1. It's the short decay. So we'll see how that compares. The next pan is a modern Fender style pan, the 4AB3C1B. However, I pulled the springs out of a non-functioning old pan and put them in this pan. So it is modern transducers with vintage springs. And then the final pan that we're going to hear is a vintage 1963 pan that is sort of, I guess, would be the, there is no better. This is the sound we're after. With, of course, the understanding that there's a lot of variety between vintage pans, so, you know, we'll deal with it. But okay, I'm going to stop babbling and I'm going to start playing. So first things first, we're going to start with the modern 3C1B pan. Okay. Next, we're going to switch to the modern short decay pan. Okay, now we're doing the modern pan with the vintage springs. Okay, and finally, the vintage pan. Okay, so I hope through that you can hear there's a pretty dramatic difference in the quality of the reverb, the length of it, and how it surrounds the note. What you'll notice is that the modern long decay pan is cavernous. The modern short decay pan is awfully close to the modern pan with the vintage springs, and the vintage spring pan that's entirely vintage has a similar decay but seems to envelop the note differently. So it's got like a playful aftertaste with a hint of cassis or something like that if I were into wine. But let's listen again. We're going to start with a modern long decay pan and another passage. Okay, now the modern short decay pan. All right, now the modern pan with vintage springs. Okay, next, the vintage pan. Okay, so I should mention also that through this whole thing, obviously I'm playing the same settings on the amp and the reverb and the guitar. The guitar, I'm using a neck and bridge pickup, kind of Fender-y. Reverb is set at the magical 666, and then the Fender is set at its awesome normal level. So next I'm just going to play a little bit of staccato rhythm, and again you can really hear the difference with the decay, and starting with the modern long decay pan. Okay, now the modern short decay pan. Okay, modern pan with vintage springs. And finally, the vintage pan. All right, so that pretty well will cover it. I'll also just play one more because why not? And I'll run through the pan. This is just going to be a solid speed picking, double picking, pickety 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 picketing passage. So here we go. So you can hear with that modern pan, the modern long decay pan, the notes almost get lost behind the wash of reverb. Here is the modern pan with the short decay. You can see you can actually hear the notes over the wash of the reverb. Next is the modern pan with the vintage springs. And finally, the vintage pan. Okay, so I hope that was helpful or edifying, or at least something where you don't look at your life and say, my goodness, I could have done far more valuable things with my time than listen to that Yahoo Yutz again. So anyway, thank you, enjoy, and again, Mel from Alameda Guitars, and oh, look, you can see my shadow across there. Look, I'm a duck. All right, see you next time.